Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this episode of Lean In Olympia. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Corey Passons. I'm the program manager for Interfaith Relations with Interfaith Works. We're a regional nonprofit organization. We're a coalition of 30 plus diverse faith and spiritual communities and affiliated organizations. We're also one of the region's largest social service providers for homeless adults, especially vulnerable homeless adults in our area. So glad you're here. Thank you. And if you want to check out past episodes of this podcast or stay up to date with the work that Interfaith Works is doing, please go to our website at interfaith-works.org or check out the Interfaith Works Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and now on Spotify with this podcast. So welcome. Our guest today is Olivia Salazar de Breaux. Hello, Olivia. How are you doing?
Hi.
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
Great.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Yeah. I want to introduce you from your bio that you shared with me. So thank you for that. You are the equity inclusion and belonging specialist for the City of Olympia Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department. We'll come back to that department because I had some ambiguity there as to whether it was just you or others. So we'll come back to the size of the department you work in. While still in high school, she began her lifelong dedication to advocacy and leadership, serving locally with the Hispanic Roundtable of South Sound, Hispanic Women's Network of Washington, Hispanic Youth Network, Latina Youth Leadership Workshop, the Latinx Youth Summit, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, South Puget Sound Community College's Office of Diversity and Equity, and City of Olympia's Committee on Diversity and Equity. She's a published author, and she cites her Chicana culture, family, and strong females as inspirations. Actually, that's a great bio.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's great to, we met in a workshop, I think maybe a year plus ago or so, and I was just really excited to see you move into the position you are in today. And I'm a supporter, and I just love the work you're doing. I'm glad that the city is doing the work too. And we'll talk about the relationship between what you bring as an individual and how that situates itself in the work of the city. But I wanted to begin, if we can, just by you sharing with us parts of your story, or where are you from? If you could tell us parts of your story, that'd be great.
Oh, thanks for those questions. So I was born in Heidelberg, Germany. My father was in the military, and I'm the oldest of 6 girls. Grew up in Lacey, so not that far from here. And yeah, what can I tell you about my childhood? I went to school throughout the North Thurston School District and ended up graduating from Timberline in 1994. I would say when I speak about my childhood, I think a lot of that really affected the way that I moved through the world and the way that I moved through the equity, inclusion, belonging world too, because we grew up in poverty. For us, what that looked like was, sometimes we didn't have food in the house. I mean, we had a house, but we didn't have electricity sometimes. And there was a moment where we were homeless that I didn't even realize we were homeless. We were living out of a van and living off of people's couches, but I didn't see it as homelessness or houselessness until way later in life. Our childhood was just plagued with several things. So we were really in survival mode a lot of the times, my sisters and I. So I think that really informs a lot of who I am and the way that I see the world, and with a lot of empathy and, just kind of understanding for people who are struggling, I think. And my very first job, as a career, was working at a TV station. I was it was really interesting the way it happened. I was part of an at-risk youth program through CYS, Community Youth Services. And they got me an internship at a local TV station. It was called Thurston Community Television at the time. Now they're TC Media. And I loved it so much, and they loved me so much, I stayed for 10 years. So it was really cool.
Oh, wow.
So that was my first real job. And I had never really anticipated a career path into government, but I was really lucky that after I graduated from Evergreen State College, which, by the way, I did it as an adult with kids and everything. After I had my bachelor's, I moved into working for the public sector and didn't realize how much I would love it. but I do. It's this amazing opportunity to create an impact and to see the impact that you create, you know? And I work with such amazing people at the city, like people who are really, really passionate about helping and about the community they serve. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that the trajectory. You covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, as you said you were, that building of character and empathy as you were coming through some of these phases of your childhood and your development. Can you tell us who was holding you, who was influencing you and helping you form to become the person you are now at that time?
That's a good question. I feel like, I had some really, I think of my mom a lot. She was really a strong influence in my life because a lot of the times she was with us on her own and trying to hold down multiple jobs, some of which were actually in the domestic violence field, so very emotionally, socially taxing and dangerous, actually. And, she's someone who I think is really good at saying what's on her mind and also speaking up for injustices. So that's one influence that's a really strong influence is my mom. And then I also had the amazing opportunity of being introduced to a whole group of amazing Latina women at a very pivotal age in high school. And that happened through my guidance counselor in a really roundabout way. But
were these women similar age to you or different?
No, these were adult women in my life. And it was interesting too, because I was at this point where I wasn't really proud to be Hispanic. I wasn't really around a lot of Hispanics other than my family. And because I was in survival mode, not really seeing outside of that, like what's beyond high school, what is out there for me. And so one day, my guidance counselor brought me into his office, and I thought I was in trouble because at that point I was like, my grades were bad. I was just one of those kids that was kind of invisible too, kind of going, falling between the gaps. And he told me about this amazing opportunity to go to this workshop that he said, this is for you. I really, really encourage you to go. And it was the Latina Youth Leadership Workshop put on by a group called the Hispanic Women's Network. And this was the first time anybody had ever shown me that there's a space for me. And it was so amazing that these women, they tried to remove as many barriers as they could at the time. Like they had transportation, it was free, they provided meals. Later on, they eventually even offered childcare for young mothers. It was just the most amazing thing. So I went and my mind was blown because I had never met other Latinas that made me think I needed, that I was deserving of more. It's kind of hard to put it in those terms, but I didn't really see much of a future for myself. And so I met these women who were like doctors, lawyers, professors, and it blew my mind. I had never seen women in professional roles like that before. And those women ended up being incredible mentors for me, continued to be in my life and nurturing me. And I ended up joining the board of that association and creating another youth group out of that association. So yeah, that was a really that moment changed my entire trajectory of life.
These were women who they had a central kind of identity that you're saying in their Latina heritage. Yes,
they were all Latina, and they also shared their stories. I remember there was a panel of women just talking, sharing their stories. And some of them talked about their immigration stories. Some of them talked about survival stories and just shared this incredible just resilience and a way to use their heritage and their experiences as a benefit, really. So that was incredible for me. That was life-changing. And so, yeah, those women have stayed in my life. And that experience changed me and made me think that I could have a voice, that I could help, that I could be a leader. And so, yeah, that's kind of started my advocacy pathway and leadership.
If that was, I think I heard you mention that was somewhat of a beginning of your sense of claiming or identity in Latina heritage. Did I hear you say something like that?
Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot with folks. It's something that I've struggled with, this, identity, Latina heritage and identity, because I've grown up here. I have two Mexican parents who chose not to speak Spanish to us on an ongoing basis on purpose, because when they were in school, they were punished for speaking Spanish. So there's this whole stigma attached to it. Luckily, thankfully, that's not the case anymore. But at the time it was. And so they, I guess that loss of language is a painful one that I didn't realize was a painful thing, until I start kind of talking about it and packing it, wow, yeah, it's really painful to not be able to have that piece of my heritage, because my language is being erased in a way, and I'm not passing this down to my children. And I also don't feel like I'm Latina enough. And I know I'm not, sometimes I don't feel like I'm, American enough. It's just this weird dynamic of just, being challenged with that identity, understanding of identity or claiming of identity. So when I met these women, it was really interesting. They all, of course, were all levels of their language fluency, different backgrounds, not just Mexican. There's Puerto Rican, Ecuadorian. So yeah, it was a wonderful introduction, I guess, to my heritage. So and since then, I mean, I've definitely claimed my heritage through foods, through dancing, through community, music. All of those are ways in which that I'm, and traditions, like Dia de los Muertos. So those are all ways in which I'm able to claim all of that, that piece of me,
Well, thanks for spending time in that moment where you were welcomed into community, and it's clearly it's a source of strength and a place of an origins, and I just really celebrate that opportunity you had from that guidance counselor to experience that. Yeah. Those little moments where you thought, I'm busted, and then you're like, this is going to be a lifelong gift to me. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if many people have that opportunity. It's so amazing that I did, and that that one moment that was so pivotal.
Yeah, wow. And then so that's a really good segue, I think, toward the work that you're doing today. I mean, this workshop you went to that was so focused on welcoming and inclusion, belonging, community. I mean, that's literally your job title now and what you're doing. And that's kind of awesome and amazing. So I just wanted to, again, name it. Your title is Inclusion, Equity, and Belonging Specialist with Parks and Arts Department and Rec. Arts,
Parks, and Recreation.
Right.
Yeah, it's a hefty mouthful.
So could we start with just a general sort of high-level description of the work and the department you're in? And then I'd like to move into some other more specific areas and aspects of the work and how it intersects with culture that's here in our city.
Sure. So first of all, I have to say this is a very new position as of last January. Yeah. But to give a little bit of background into why Parks has prioritized this work, it was really in 2020 when there was the reckoning around George Floyd's murder. And the department really prioritized looking at equity and inclusion and belonging, and how are we supporting our community? What kind of barriers are there? And also recognizing that we are stewards of so many healing spaces. And what a gift that is, and are we allowing for everybody to be able to appreciate those gifts, right? So they started an equity, inclusion, belonging initiative. And then the team created a committee, an EIB committee, and started kind of, thinking through these initiatives, like what are some things that we can do in every single aspect of the department. So it's not just like one person taking it on, it's like everybody like really thinking through like, how can we be really intentional about this? How can we remove barriers? And one of the initiatives was to hire somebody full-time. And it was an amazing opportunity for me. And it was a really good segue from what I had been doing before as a diversity, equity, inclusion, coordinator. I was like coordinator specialist. No, it was coordinator at that time for the city. And one of the roles that I got to play was to be somebody who would work on cultural celebrations. And so we did our first Juneteenth event. And I had already coordinated with the Parks Department to do that. And it was such a beautiful collaboration that, they were like, wow, Olivia, this would be something, would you be interested in maybe taking this on? And I was like, it just seemed like a really natural progression and into something that I already am very passionate about and that I really love doing. That representation piece, that inclusion piece, ensuring that people feel like they're welcomed and that they belong in spaces. Like that's something that I really love to do. So anyway, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. So when you said healing spaces earlier, you're talking specifically from the reference point of Parks Department, right? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, Parks Department specifically. Okay. But I'm also thinking about like, with recreation, we have programming. And some of that can be healing too. Like that artistic ability to be able to create. And, we have ceramics classes and we have hiking and kayaking. And then there's the art piece too that is also really healing when you can see yourself reflected in the art around you, because it has such a way of capturing and elevating stories. So all of that is part of it.
So the arts, like public arts, like for example, like sculptures on Percival Landing, some of the street cement facades that are sanctioned by the city for public art, those are all in this department as well. Okay,
yes, so and like events like Arts Walk as well. Those
are huge opportunities for reaching people at the level of culture and having an intentional message. Okay, it's good. So how then did the city determine we're starting with parks, and then was there a vision from there that we want this work to expand beyond Parks Department?
Yeah, so actually they didn't start with parks. They started with an overall diversity, equity, inclusion coordinator, which, that was my role previously, and was thinking about, okay, we need to really create a social justice and equity commission because we need to have this work be led by community. And then start thinking about workforce, like, there's so many aspects of DEI work within the city. So now we have somebody who is solely focused, like a DEI coordinator, solely focused on HR, so that we can think about workforce trainings, retention, recruitments. And then we have another person that works in the assistant city manager's office doing like citywide DEI initiatives, being the liaison for the commission, doing the engagement and relationship building, and more on the accountability and justice side of things. That's Toby's role. And then there's my role in parks, which is very unique because we don't have another equity-focused position in any of the other departments, but that is our goal. Well, I won't say that's our goal. That's a dream of ours.
Okay.
Because every single department has a different culture, has a different shared language, processes and ways of doing things. So eventually, maybe one day, who knows, there'll be several Olivias in every
several
department.
Olivias. Okay, that's my vision is several Olivias.
Several Olivias. Just think of me. Yeah, but so that it makes sense to what everybody's doing in that department. And so for us, I don't know, like Parks basically took it upon themselves to create this initiative, it wasn't something that was that they were guided to do.
Yeah.
It was something that they did.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit unique and really fantastic to be able to be welcomed into that space. And so part of what I do is there is really helping facilitate that equity, inclusion, belonging committee within parks, which consists of people from several different parts of the department, all different parts of the department, kind of being like a North Star, is helping guide and facilitate and coordinate and get them the resources that they need and help have those conversations on a regular basis, build that community of practice. And then there's the cultural celebration side, which also includes relationship building.
Yeah.
Because the way that we're doing cultural celebrations is really like we partner with community organizations. So it really is lifting up their celebration.
Yeah.
And I really love that way of doing things. I think it just makes so much more sense. It feels more authentic. And yeah, so that's what I get to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the recent event at Squaxin Park.
Oh, that was such an amazing day.
It was. Yeah. It was
and thank
really
you for being
amazing
a part of that.
Oh, I was
too.
honored to be a part of it. Yeah. And but it was very well done too. And just the way that the school children were involved in it. It was set in the park as it should be itself. It was centered around Indigenous leadership and content. That was the primary offering of the day. And the event had a sense of, I don't know if this is the best word. It felt authentic. It felt like there's integrity in it. It felt real. And the Squaxin leadership, who I know who were there that day, they had a sense of being relaxed. They felt welcomed. They felt like they were there in their full selves from the folks that I talked to that day. And so it was a great event. In my mind, that's such a recent, wonderful example of the work that y'all are doing.
Thank you for saying all of that. And yeah, I mean, to be able to walk away from that day and to hear from the tribe leaders, community members that were there, that it felt like a day of healing, that they felt seen, that they felt celebrated, like that was everything to me. I mean, anything else could have gone wrong. And if I had just heard that alone, that would have been like, it feels like success. We have so much work to do. I mean, this is just a part of that work, that ability to celebrate, to recognize, to acknowledge, to honor, like all of that's part of it. So yeah, that's probably one of my most favorite things that I've done so far in this tour.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great event.
Thank you.
So one of the things I did doing notes for this is I kind of laid out the 3 words that are in your title: inclusion, equity, and belonging. I was just kind of looking at them, sort of. Each one of these is like a universe, and there's so much behind each one. There's systems and theories and work to be done. One of the realities too, though, is that when the position was created, there were people who didn't understand why. Why do we need this position? Why is this work a part of our funded budget? Why is it needed? And so I was wondering, can we just reflect on these words? And my hunch is that we need this position because there was something lacking, or there was an active aversion to inclusion or equity or belonging at the level of our society. So I mean, how did you respond then to the position being created, or what do you say now to the need, the need for this position?
Well, yeah, I do hear a lot from especially before, I think in my previous role, people, I guess a lack of understanding or maybe backlash about why are our resources being put into this. And really it's about fairness. It's about, justice for people that have been on the sidelines, that haven't had the opportunity to participate or to be served. And it's a continuous process too. It's not something that's just going to be a one and done thing. And we need everybody to be able to join in, to be reflected in the community, to have power and change things. It's not just about making spaces available either. It's about really making those like intentional asks and welcoming in. So there's so many aspects of it, but I don't know. I think I said this at council the other day. I said, I know what it feels like to feel like you're erased or like you don't matter. And I think about that a lot because there's a lot of people that feel that in this community. Imagine how amazing it will be if nobody feels that way, if they all feel like they have if they can feel welcome to walking in the door at City Hall. When I still feel from folks or hear from folks that there's a lack of trust or they don't even want to go into a government building. Or, if we like saying things like, if you guys offer, something for the community, they're not going to come because they hate government. How amazing would it be if we change that narrative, if we really do make it, welcoming spaces and we're in collaboration with, in community with folks from the different groups, different communities.
Yeah. That's deep work, if you're in an organization or at the level of a city. I mean, you're talking about culture and changing cultures of acceptance and trust, and those are deep waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think, you and I talked about this before the podcast. It's like you have to set those conversations up intentionally too. It's not just something, well, I don't have the ability to just like right off the bat get into like a really deep conversation about racism just on the fly. It's something that you have to really be intentional about, thoughtful, set up a container for the conversation so people aren't harmed in it. I mean, there's really a lot of intentionality that needs to happen. And so it's okay to do things. I don't like that go slow to go fast thing that people say. I say more like go at the speed that it takes to be intentional and to really be thinking through all the aspects so that you can plan something thoughtfully and mitigate any kind of harm that you might cause along the way. Yeah,
I wish I could cite the name of the author around Interfaith Works. We often use the quote of moving at the speed of trust.
Yes.
And this is
Is it Brene Brown, maybe? I don't know.
No, I don't think so, but it's citation forthcoming. We'll put it in the link or whatever. But I just, when I ask you that question about the need for the position, I hope one of the things I want to state is that I so hope that there can be a realization at a wider level for people who have been included, who've existed in that dominant space, culturally dominant space, and they've maybe without even knowing have been included and have just appreciated that without even recognizing it. My hope is that folks in that societal role, of which I'm a part of that, can appreciate this work and sustain it and support it too. The education is needed across all sectors. One, to build trust in folks who haven't experienced the belonging, and one who've maybe taken it for granted and maybe need to share and open up. So that spectrum is here to here. It's everything. It's all people in our city that need to understand this more and come toward it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like just one person's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility with everyone. And that's kind of what I really love about the model that we have going on in parks, arts and recreation, is that it does feel like it is a whole community of folks that realize that this is something that they, equity, inclusion, belonging matters to every single aspect of their work. And it's not like we just come up with the framework and, like I teach it to them and then it's done.
And just get it. Yeah.
It's not like that. It's continuous, like unpacking. It's, conversations. It's like thinking about what other ways, like we follow up year to year or, day to day, week to week about, did this work well? Who's been left out? Has someone been harmed? Like, how can we make this better?
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, we were talking about these different words in your title, and I was thinking about that famous, pyramid, the hierarchy of needs, the Maslow hierarchy. And I was looking at it again the other day, getting ready for this conversation, and I was just struck again by how low belonging is in the hierarchy of needs. Like there's like survival, and shelter and food. And then like right near that, there's like safety and belonging, and it's below self-esteem even. So at least this model paints a picture of human development and being such that if I'm in a place of being unlodged or not belonging in a place, I'm not going to be able to develop that sense of self-esteem that will help me navigate the world, with fullness, and be able to give and to have good boundaries and to have good productivity and to have good relationships. That's resting upon an assumption of belonging.
Yes,
very powerful.
That is very powerful. Did that model get like debunked, or is it like, have people like talked about the challenge with that model and like, maybe suggested other models? I'm just curious.
Well, the only specific to Maslow, one of the things that happened with his model is that he developed a sixth kind of top to the pyramid, if you will, which is about self-transcendence, where it stopped at 5, which is, like self-actualization. Towards the end of his life, one of the last papers that he published was about adding another level, which is self-transcendence. And so that kind of makes you appreciating virtues for the sake of the virtues, sublimating oneself towards service. This didn't take root in the legacy of this model as much as he probably wanted it to, but I'm sure there are other social commentaries on it. I'm not able to talk about those today, but do you have, is there a way you're thinking about this in a critical or constructive way?
Well, so this is taking me back to my college days, and I just kind of remember that I always had kind of a knee-jerk reaction to that model, and I think it's because of like how I told you I grew up, and like, so does that mean that I'm not able to go on to these like self-actualization pieces without getting my other needs met? Because a lot of times my other needs weren't being met over here. So it was just an interesting, like, I don't know. So.
Yeah, I mean the shape of the model of the pyramid represents like utmost instability, right, in architecture, but then again, in other like developmental models for the human developing, there's a sense of it being cyclical, and so I haven't seen this recast in any other kind of image other than that stable pyramid, but it would be interesting to explore that. And I appreciate you naming your own story as a commentary, and I'm sure Maslow actually, as a developmental psychologist, would appreciate that too.
Oh.
So.
Well, thank you.
We don't know, but let's just assume so, right? Easy to do so. Easy to do so. So recently, Jared Koepp was my guest here at Lean In Olympia. He's the Washington State 2022 Teacher of the Year. He's up in North Thurston school there, and he's the director of the Native Studies program there. He's going to be our little plug here. He's going to be our keynote guest at the November 20th Resetting Our Sacred Table event, which is a community interfaith event coming up at Temple Beth Hopfilo. And he said a remarkable thing the other day. He's an indigenous person of the Wukchumni tribe in California, developed a sense of tribal identity later in life. He referred to himself as an institutional insurgent, in that he works within the system as one who seeks reform of the system. He referred to himself as an institutional insurgent. And I'm just wondering how, when you hear that, what do you hear? And do you relate at any level to what Jared Koepp named himself when he visited us 2 months ago? Yeah.
Well, it resonates because, when you're, I would say for me, like being tasked to do this work, you're within the system and still trying to change the system, but the system isn't really made for you. So it's like this thing of like, I'm in this institution that isn't set up for me to be successful. So how do I do this? So I'm constantly navigating. So that's what I hear when I hear institutional insurgent, of like just recognizing that not everybody's set up to succeed here. How do we navigate that? Also, I'm also one of the lucky ones that don't get to, like that the system isn't made for. So how do I navigate that too? Yeah.
Yeah. How often are you holding that awareness as you're in your work? Is this something that's kind of with you all the time?
I think it is with me all the time. We talk sometimes about white supremacy norms, but it's not something that I like talk about a lot because it's a trigger for a lot of folks that I work with. It's, I'm a minority here, and so I don't want. It's like I'm in a vulnerable space if I'm going to constantly be challenging my colleagues in a way that makes them shut down, right? So, yeah, the other thing I think about, as I've been talking about it with other folks in my network, is the right to comfort, and how my realization of, wow, there's never been a time in my career where I have prioritized my own comfort. I've always prioritized everyone else's comfort around me, regardless of how painful that is. But it was like this realization of like, whoa, yeah, that means that, there's if there's ever a microaggression, that's just something that it gets internalized, or at least it has been before I started getting into this work more. So
when someone who said that, who named that dynamic, the right to comfort?
Thank you for asking.
Is
and
it
I
a colleague?
don't remember.
No,
it's not a colleague. No, this is like one of the white supremacy norms, actually. Acuna, I believe, is the
Tima
person.
Acuna,
yeah.
I forgot about that as one of the white supremacy, because I'm free to do that, right? No, that's a good one. I'm gonna investigate that one. When you talk about that, it's like the right of comfort is like, that's a demand made by white people in the workplace that you feel and that you have felt to the need to accommodate. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
And it's just one. I mean, there's other things like perfectionism and timing. Like everything has to be
power of the written word.
Power of the written word. So.
That's that to hold that and to sense it and then to internalize it puts the onus, the emotional labor on you in that situation. Yeah.
And so I think for me, some of the great things coming out of like where I'm at right now is the realization that actually the way that I come into this space is right. Because before I felt like I was kind of a square peg in a round hole. Like I'm super relational, but yet this doesn't feel like that is really conducive. Like it's not conducive to what we're doing here, or, to slow down and really think through a process beforehand and ask the questions, and inviting people into a conversation is the right thing. So that's something I'm happy about and excited about, and gives me hope. That was another one of your questions that was coming up, like what gives me hope. That's one of the things that gives me hope is that, I'm not coming into this feeling like I'm wrong all the time. I'm actually seeing that this is right. My colleagues are recognizing it. They're seeing me and they're calling it out, saying, man, thank you for doing that. This is exactly what we needed. Wow. So that feels good. That feels very supportive. I'm really happy to hear that. Yes. Yeah, because it sounds like from what you described before, there's still a labor, there's still an effort towards the work you're doing. Thank you for the work and all that you're holding and helping lead people toward that more wider vision that you're offering. Really appreciate that. There's I have a word here. I don't have a specific question about it, but I have the word healing. Down, I was talking about the event we're doing in November 20th, and the theme for the event is about healing, and we're going to be welcoming different faith leaders and different community groups and some artists from the Bridge, and who are all going to be some poets reflecting on healing. So there's going to be a wide variety of ways that people
answer that theme, when you hear the word and in the context of our conversation today, what comes to mind for you?
I think when I think about healing, I think about myself and the lessons that I've learned as I've been, in this space, this career path, and the importance of healing, or being very intentional about healing practices and self-care for folks doing the work. Because you have to build your resilience in order to stay here, to do this work well. And so I think for me is like all of those lessons learned and like really prioritizing my mental health and doing things in the moment when it's needed, setting boundaries, creating networks, adding space for pause sometimes. Those are the things that I think about when I think about healing. And I think about family time too. I'm a mother. I have two boys. And so I think about the wonderful times that we spend on the water or even just at the house, just being silly, because I have a little one that has the most contagious giggle and is snuggling with a dog and with a husband. And like, those are things to me feel like really healing moments. And then also there's the outlets like the artistic side, the writing, the singing. And so all of that's important for healing and for just building resilience.
Yeah, I love that list because it's robust. It's big. It's good. So I'm really happy to hear that. People engaged in the work. I mean, to have the deficits in that area, then the service that you're gifted to offer can recede. And so to be able to give fully, you're taking care of you and doing that healing. It's just really good to hear that.
Yes, it's good to be doing it. I'm glad that I'm doing it, and it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. Yeah. And also, like, the other thing too is the mental health aspect of it. Investing in myself by getting a therapist that I totally connected with, like, and helping remove the stigma for folks that want to seek out therapy. It's an amazing gift to have for yourself to, like I said, to build that resilience, to think, go deep and insightful, and to do it in a way that builds you up rather than causes harm. I have an amazing person that also I always say she's kind of like a unicorn because she is a woman of color. She understands a lot of the references and the history, and just she knows a lot about racial justice work, and that's really, really been critical for me for my healing.
This is a person outside of the work structures, someone you can reference
like an actual person in the community doing the work. So I feel very blessed and lucky that I have healthcare that will allow me to get most of that paid.
Wonderful.
Not everybody has that, so I realize what how lucky I am to have that.
Well, what is currently in the vision of your team? If you could share now, and just kind of looking out, what's kind of on the front of your list right now for the work that's coming up for y'all?
Yeah, so right now our team is working on building our work plan. And so we're really looking, again, like at all the departments, like what's happening, what's coming up, accessibility-wise, are there, playgrounds that we can make more accessible? There's things like that. And then there's also, like, for me, the cultural celebrations. I want to expand that program because right now we only have a few that we've done. Because again, we just started in January, but I'd love to see like a Hispanic Heritage Month celebration, which would be dear to my heart. Asian Pacific Islander, like just to find those relationships, to seek out relationships with folks in the community organizations that serve these groups, and to figure out what we can do, do something big or maybe small, whatever, but something that feels authentic and good, so that more people feel represented. And
how can people learn about your work? How could they support what's going on?
Well, we have a diversity, equity, inclusion e-newsletter at the city. So if people sign up at olympiawad.gov/news, I believe is what it is, then you can sign up for that. And then we typically will share out any big like initiatives or events that are happening. That's the best way. And then we're also, we post things on our parks webpage as well. So it's olympiawad.gov/parks. So those are the two best ways.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned hope. We're wrapping up. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned one example of hope. I just wanted to kind of end on a note of hope. If you could share with us a place where you're seeing hope, maybe as influenced through the work that you're doing or in any other way, I'd love to hear that as we kind of conclude.
I see hope in just hearing the conversations that people are having, in the workplace, outside of the workplace, like normalizing these conversations around race and around inequities, and just wanting people to all feel like they belong. Like that's something that I'm hearing everywhere, and I really appreciate that. And just seeing it, government-wise as well. Like we now have a Washington State Office of Equity, and that's incredible because that means that the work is being prioritized and spreading and very intentionally. And at the city, I mean, we have amazing people. Like I work with really, really incredible people, and just to see that I don't have to sell them on the idea.
That's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have that in their agencies, and yet here in Olympia, we do, like from the, top leadership on down, like folks understand how important this is to prioritize people feeling like they belong here and that they're welcomed here in the city and that they're represented and that they're seen. Yeah. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Appreciate it. Again, this has been Olivia Salazar de Breaux, who's the Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Specialist for City of Olympia Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. And just if you want to check out past episodes, pop into our website at interfaith-works.org. And then this will be posted on our YouTube channel and Spotify. Thank you all for being here. Be well, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.